Hello, this is Phil Altstaetter with your Fertilizer Focus for the week of June 2nd, 2025. This week we're going to take a pretty deep dive into why phosphates are as high priced as they are and look at 2 or 3 different factors that are leading to this price increase. I know some of you like to listen to this on the video format only. There are going to be quite a few numbers shared this week and some charts. You may want to go back and look at the written portion as well if you really want to study some of that. That will pop the charts up here. There's quite a bit of data in the update this week. So what we're really looking at is why are the phosphate prices as high as they are. Keep in mind, as we went into this spring season, most retailers, Sunrise included, only bought about 75–80% of what they thought they were going to need compared to last year. Phosphates were so high priced, didn't know what the cutbacks were going to be looking like. For the most part, folks worked through those phosphates, and the system's going to end extremely empty. And therefore, the system ending empty, they come out telling us we had to buy our fall phosphates for next fall. Not only we have to buy them much earlier than I had anticipated, we're paying a much higher price than I expected as well coming out of this spring season. So what caused them to come out with pricing so early? We already know that the U.S. has got countervailing duties that 3 countries and really 3 companies have to pay to bring their phosphates to the U.S. On top of that, we've added what I'm going to refer to in this update as the Trump tariffs. And there's a 10% tariff across a lot of different countries now as far as bringing phosphates to the U.S. So when some of the importers and traders, particularly the traders, realized they were not going to be able to find imported tons of phosphates, they approached the domestic producers, primarily Mosaic, and wanted to start buying phosphates much earlier than normal. And they were trying to buy these tons for Q3, late Q2, Q3, and so they had something to work with, knowing that the import tons were not going to show up. Once the domestic producers got hit with this demand, they went ahead and come out with pricing higher than we expected for Q3 ship only, and got a very nice book of business put to bed. Already since we've seen that offer come out, they're at least $30 to $40 higher than where those offers were. And today, to get an offer from a domestic phosphate producer, you're probably looking at Q4 shipment. Sure, you can find some folks who've already got some positions who will sell you here in Q3, but really another new ton coming to the marketplace, they're not going to offer that until shipment sometime in Q4. So the first thing we're going to look at, and we'll put a chart up here, is the pressure from countervailing and the Trump tariffs. In this chart, you will see the first column is the country, okay? The second column is the company, because sometimes in an example of Russia, there's 2 different producers of phosphates, and are suffering different countervailing duty percentages, okay? So you see the first column is the country, the second one is the company. The third column is what products that country generally ships to the U.S., okay? Some people will ask about trip or whatever. You can see the country and what products they ship. The fourth column from the left is the countervailing duty percentage. So the top 3 are suffering a countervailing duty. So whatever the selling price is, if the selling price is $700 in the Gulf, you take 700 times, in the case of Eurochem, 47%. They have to pay almost $350 a ton in tariffs. They're not bringing nothing here right now, okay, or in duties. They're not bringing nothing here. So that's the countervailing percentage. Then on over to the right, the last column, the first column on the right, or the last column all the way over to the right, are the Trump tariffs. So example, Morocco, not only do they have a countervailing duty of 16.8, they also have a Trump tariff of 10% on top of that. So you can see a majority of these countries, the Trump tariff at 10% is impacting a lot of people. So if you really think about it, you say, well, a Trump tariff of 10%, that really shouldn't cause prices to go up as much as it has, right? I mean, some of these should be able to work through this. Why are we working with such crazy high P2O5 values? So the next thing let's look at here today, first we've covered the tariff part now, let's look at production. And we're particularly going to look at Mosaic because they're the giants in the U.S. They sought and got relief through the countervailing duties. But how is their production today compared to 20 years ago? Okay, We know they've had rock quality issues. We know that they're producing less. And you will see in this chart titled Domestic Production Rates, the orange bar on this chart is the amount of P2O5 production, and the gray bar is the amount of product production, right? Which would make sense, right? The highest concentration we have is 52%. We're producing a lot of MES10 now, which is 40%. We're going to produce a lot less tons of P2O5 than we are of product. But you will notice around 2003, 2004, the 2004-2005 timeframe, the U.S. was producing somewhere around 8,000 tons of P2O5 a year. Today, you know, we are well below 4,000 tons. I say 4,000 tons, you multiply it by the 1,000, so 4 million tons of P2O5 a year. Okay, we used to produce 8 million tons, now we're producing 4 million tons. Domestic production has dropped by half. So now we have these countervailing duties, which limits product coming in here. We have what I'm calling Trump tariffs on there as well, but yet the the biggest domestic producer, Mosaic, is producing less than half of the tons of P2O5 they just did 20 years ago. The second thing as we talk about production, though I don't have a fancy graph this time, is exports out of China have been way, way off this year. Now maybe not all those exports would come to the U.S., but in 2023, China exported somewhere around 5.1 million tons of P2O5. They exported 5.1 million tons. You will notice they exported more than Mosaic produced in 2023. Okay, huge amount. Get that into context. That's what they exported. In 2024, they slid back to around 4.5 million tons of P2O5. And this year in 2025, remember this is on a fertilizer year, which starts July 1st. As we wrap up this fertilizer year, China is expected to export only around 2.6 million tons, metric tons of P2O5. Okay, significantly less, basically half than what they did just 2 years ago. So not only is North America producing less, now we have China virtually exporting none. Okay, we also have the tariffs in place, limiting where it can go. I'm trying to paint this background here for you. Okay, so enough with the background. I believe you can draw the conclusion that P2O5 inventories are very tight. Couple that with duties and tariffs into the U.S., and you can just see there's very little inventory to work with. Okay, when we look at a 10-year price chart, you can see we are at historically high retail values of, this is a map chart, compared to the last 10 years. Yes, we had a spike there in 2022, but look back farther than that. I know we're post-COVID and everything else is more expensive. That's all on this chart, but you can see where the retail price of MAP has been here at Sunrise over the last 10 years. So, those of you who follow me at all know I like to look at the value of fertilizer relative to the value of the output, which in this case is corn. Right now we're buying this P2O5 here this summer. It will not be used to this fall, so it'll be used on the 2026 corn crop. Okay? The chart we have here shows you the average number of bushels of corn producers have had to invest to buy 1 ton of MAP over the last 5 years. So, on average, growers have had to invest 151.16 bushels of corn to buy a ton of MAP. It's been as low as 114.76 and as high as 179.61. So with December 26 corn trading at $4.59, as I was putting this presentation together, we take 459 times 151 bushels to buy a ton on average the last 5 years, gives us a price of $693.82. The retail price of MAP to be in line with the 5-year average should be $693.82. Okay? We're not there today. Okay, now if we look at the highest ratio in the last 5 years, is 179.16, multiply that by 4.59, and we get a price of $824.40. Okay, growers can be at the highest ratio possible, sell corn for $4.59, and the price of MAP should be $824. Well, if we look at keep in mind the cost of money today and the fact that most of you don't really need this MAP until fall, we're going to have to add $5 or $6 a ton to that to get to the fall price, and realistically a fall retail price of MAP is going to be $850. Okay, you take that $850, divide that by that $4.59 for these 26, and we have a ratio above the 5-year high of 185.18. This is a horrible ratio. Traditionally, Phil would say, stay away from this. Don't buy a ratio that high. Wait until the day you actually have to have it. Now keep in mind, Sunrise was forced to buy P2O5, different forms of P2O5 phosphates for this fall because our system was empty and we knew the imports were lacking, as we've laid the picture out here before, and we also couple that with the fact our system is empty. We did have to buy some P2O5. So what our recommendation is we locked in about half of our fall needs. We would recommend that growers buy 50% of their P2O5 needs, their phosphate needs for the 2026 crop. Don't like making this recommendation. It's above the 5-year high. I have made recommendations in the past. You go back to 2022, that was above the 5-year high. It was very much the right thing to do. So it's very uncommon, but we're being forced in this kind of because of market dynamics. So the obvious question is, Phil, what could cause this to change? Okay, and realistically, there's always someone going to say, oh, weather could cause it if we don't get any crop planted or we don't get something harvested on time. And to that I agree, but realistically, I'm looking at 3 things right now to see if this thing will change. Number 1, will the White House wake up some morning and just change their opinion on tariffs and do something wildly different? Very possible. Okay, if they do something different, how long would it take for imports to return to the Gulf? Okay, who knows what kind of wild hair they could have? How long could it take, though, before the imports actually showed up? 2, the second thing I'm watching is exports out of China. We talked about the fact that the Chinese exported more tons of P2O5 than what we produced in the U.S. in 2023. If China dramatically increases their exports, increases the supply available in the marketplace, that should put pressure on the price at some point in time. Okay. Second thing I'm watching is what's coming out of China. Third, and this is maybe a less of a thing, but it's a big thing, what will U.S. retailers do when they're offered Q4 tons for 2025 of P2O5? If folks like Sunrise are still sitting on a big portion of these Q3 tons we bought for fall application, what happens when the retailer in the U.S. just says, no more? We've got what we need. We're going to work our way through our existing tons. We don't need you to continue to sing us tons of MAP or DAP or triple domestic producers. Then what happens to the price? Okay. Keep in mind though, we're already watching producers put on phosphates with a salt and pepper shaker. We're just not putting much MAP and DAP out there. Okay. I can tell you stories where folks who bought 100% of the P2O5 they bought from us in the fall 2024, come back in 2025 and bought less than 25% of what they had the year before. How many years can that cutback happen? Just a question we have to keep in mind here at Sunrise. We have to have some product for you to work through. So all that information being said, we recommend you buy half of your fall 2025 phosphate needs for the 2026 crop. I'm sure there's some questions. This thing got too long. There's lots of graphs here. We thank you for your support, and I hope this helps tell the story of what's going on with phosphates today. This has been your Fertilizer Focus for June the 2nd, 2025. Thank you very much.